free and open society. And we are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings.
I think a new world order is emerging.
An inside job? How dare you? How dare you?
To create, so to say, mass-produced models of human beings arranged in some kind of a scientific caste system.
We shall go on to the end. We shall fight with growing confidence and growing strength in the air. We shall never surrender.
Good day, everybody. It's the 12th of December 2015, 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. This is UCY.tv. I'm your host Walter, bringing you the Solvinur Event. If you go to UCY.tv, there's a chat link you can find there. And some people have already found it, like Cap and Duck and Grump. Frog is there, JJ, Jules, Ufde and Vince. Welcome everybody. How you doing? So, if anything happened while I was gone, let me know. I didn't follow any news, as usual. Been digging into some of the history. And found a webpage regarding philosophy. And in one of those podcasts, they were talking about 13th century logic. And somebody says double audio. What's that? Okay, Vince, you were having to... Anyway, they were discussing 13th century logic, and they came to the conclusion that even though it being part of the trivium, that's specifically they mentioned the trivium, that logic was first. And I thought was like, well, that doesn't make sense, right? They taught me grammar first. So could be possible that even in those days they were messing up the order of the trivium in order to confuse. Grammar first, then logic, and then rhetoric. So, but that's it's a pretty nice site. It's mainstream, as in I would say government approved or something like that. Yeah, it's good to know how these people think about it. Also, he starts with Hume's. First Greek philosopher, and he's gone on to other areas as well, like Eastern philosophy from India. So there's a lot of homework to do there. About what we're going to do today, I still have some open from last week, which we didn't get to. I think I may have lost one also, one tab here. I got way too many tabs open, and I may have closed one that I shouldn't have. the things that were left over from last week are, among others, the United Nations thingies. My computer is very sluggish at the moment. And what else? The brain. We can go further with that, or hermetics. Something we can dive into for a little bit. So we had this update from Windows 10, and I don't know what it is, but it seems to me that it's been like dragging yourself through mud, right? Like also now, browser's not responding. Yeah, it's not so good. You should be joining this call, actually. This is you guys own these 2 hours. It's supposed to be your radio. Like for the people, by the people, and so on. So what you do is you get Skype open and find me, Solvinur, Solvinur. If I'm not on the list yet, send me a contact request. And I'll drag you into the conversation. So, what do you guys want to talk about in the chat? Let's see what else. Do we open anything else? Not sure if this is useful for air. Anyway, that philosophy thing, history of philosophy.net is where you can find that. History of excuse me, history of philosophy.net. Anything else? Oops, way too many tabs open. All this clicking takes too long. Here we go. Vincent says social engineering. All right. Let's see. Blah, blah, blah. Here it is. Social engineering. Social engineering. Huh? All right. This is political science, according to Wikipedia. Social engineering. Right, so I'll copy this, open another one, put that there, go. Yeah. This one back to the chat room. Ufde, also welcome. What's up, buddy? So, social engineering. Shall we do the wiki for a little introduction? Social engineering is a discipline in social science that refers to the efforts to influence particular attitudes and social behaviors on a large scale, whether by governments, media, or private groups, in order to produce desired characteristics in a target population. Social engineering can also be understood philosophically as a deterministic phenomenon where that's not good. The end goals, that's probably end goals of the architects of the new social construct are realized. Social engineers use the method of science. Hold on. To analyze and understand social systems in order to design the appropriate methods to achieve the desired result in the human subjects. Yeah, human subjects. Right? Skipping a little bit. And it seems that there's even a Dutch guy involved here. The term social engineer was introduced in an essay by the Dutch industrialist J.C. van Marken in 1894. The idea was that modern employees needed the assistance of specialists, social engineers, in handling the human problems on the planet, just as they needed technical expertise, engineers, to deal with the problem of dead matter, materials, machines, processes. The term was brought to America in 1899, where the notion of social engineering was also launched as the name of the task of the social engineer in this sense. Social engineering was the title of a small journal in 1899 from 1900 named Social Service, and in 1909 the title of a book by its former editor, William H. Tolman, translated in French in 1910, marking the end of the usage of the terminology in the sense of von Marken. When the social gospel sociologist Edwin L. Earps, the social engineer, published during the efficiency craze of 1911 in the United States, the usage of the term was launched that has since been the standard by one building a metaphor of social relations as machineries, to be dealt with in the manner of a technical engineer. Sounds like technocracy, doesn't it? A prerequisite of social engineering is a body of reliable information about the society that is to be engineered. Right? This is this also relates to the I'm gonna call them myth, right? Mythology, stories from India that in long time ago, when for instance a prince from some emperor is made king of one of the kingdoms in this empire that the king has, then this son of his, this prince, would become king in that land. And what the first thing that he did then was to get to know everything about that kingdom and about its people. What kind of philosophy do they have? What kind of religion do they have? In order to know how to influence them, how to rule them. I don't know what that is, Vince, but if you want to talk about it on air, you know what to do, right? michaelcross.net. I'm not sure if I've heard of him. And so, have to know reliable information about the society that is to be engineered. And effective tools to carry out the engineering, the availability of which has dramatically increased within the past 100 years. Prior to the printing press, it was difficult for groups outside of the wealthy to gain access to a reliable body of information, as the media for conveying the information was prohibitively expensive. With the rise of the information age, information can be distributed and produced on an unprecedented scale. Similarly, digital technology has increased the variety and access of effective tools. However, it has also created questionable, reliable bodies of information. That's how I heard of him. Michael Cross. He's also on UCY.tv. While social engineering can be carried out by any organization without regard to scale or sponsoring in the public or private sector, some of the most comprehensive and most pervasive campaigns, I thought persuasive, but no, pervasive campaigns of social engineering are those initiated by powerful central governments with a system of authority to widely affect the individuals and cultures within their purview. Alright, so far I don't see much wrong with the definitions, the terms, the points being made here. Extremely intensive social engineering campaigns occurred in countries with authoritarian governments, like which we would probably come across in the brain. Linked to this is Operation Mockingbird. Seems like a social engineering thing to me. The government of the Soviet Union embarked on a campaign to fundamentally alter the behavior and ideals of Soviet citizens, to replace the old social framework of Tsarist Russia with a new Soviet culture, to create the new Soviet man. The Soviets used newspapers, books, films, mass relocations, and even architectural design tactics to serve as a social condenser and change personal values and private relationships. In a less positive manner, political executions, like the Night of the Murdered Poets, and arguably fear of becoming a victim of mass murder with the mass killing under communist regimes, played an influential role in the social engineering frameworks in Soviet Russia. Similar examples are the Chinese Great Leap Forward. It's a clickable thing here at Wiki. And the Cultural Revolution program and the Khmer Rouge plan of deurbanization of Cambodia in Singapore. The government's housing policies attempt to promote a mix of all races within each subsidized housing district in order to foster social cohesion and national loyalty while providing citizens with affordable housing. That one needs a citation, Wiki says. In Tanzania in the 1970s, the government pursued a policy of enforced villagization under Operation VG in order to promote collective farming. Now it goes on to that's strange, right? Those two terms together, non-authoritarian regimes. That's how Wiki continues here. How do you figure that, right? Non-authoritarian regimes, as if such a thing actually exists, tend to rely on more sustained social engineering campaigns that create more gradual but ultimately far-reaching change. Examples include the war on drugs in the United States, the increasing reach of intellectual property rights and copyright, and the promotion of elections as a political tool. The campaign for promoting elections, which is by far the most successful of the three examples, has been in place for over 2 centuries. Social theorists of the Frankfurt School, those were communists, right? Frankfurt School. In Weimar, Germany, like the Theodor Adorno, had also observed the new phenomena of mass culture and commented on its new manipulative power with the rise of the National Socialists. When the rise of the National Socialists drove him out of the country around 1930. Many of them became connected with the Institute for Social Research in the United States. Right? It's like having a Department of Culture, something like that. As if the government will decide what kind of culture the people are supposed to have. Why else would a government have a separate body for dealing with it? Right? It's not because they really want to know what the Dutch people, if left alone by the government, would what kind of culture these people would share. It has nothing to do with that. It's to steer culture. And it's the same here with, the Institute for Social Research in the United States. It's not because they're so interested in the social status of anybody or something like that. National Socialists themselves were no strangers to the idea of influencing political attitudes and redefining personal relationships. The National Socialist propaganda machine under Joseph Goebbels was the synchronized, sophisticated and effective tool for creating public opinion. In a similar vein, the Greek military junta of 1967 to 1974 attempted to steer Greek public opinion not only by propaganda but also by inventing new words and slogans such as, I can't read that, it's old partyism, and then Greece of Christian Greeks, and then nation-saving revolution. Social engineering can be used as a means to achieve a wide variety of different results, as illustrated by the different governments and other organizations that have employed it. The discussion of the possibilities for such manipulation became especially active following World War II, with the advent of television. Well, I would say it was before that also with Edward Bernays, right? Or is that later? Am I confusing times here? I think it was earlier. And continuing discussion of techniques of social engineering, particularly in advertising and bias-based journalism, is still quite pertinent in the Western model of consumer capitalism. There's a lot of information also about this topic in Century of the Self and The Trap, and another one of which the name at the moment escapes me, both by Adam Curtis, which you can get at topdocumentaries.com. There's also other links if you want them, where you can see those, because most of the websites you get a message that BBC says you can't see this. So, but they're a good starting point. And it's still, I stopped in the middle of a sentence there, is still quite pertinent in the Western model of consumer capitalism. Especially that consumer part of it is a big deal. There was a point in history, I don't know when, somewhere around 1920, give or take a couple of decades, I'm not sure, that the people in America, they weren't economically bad off, but they were only buying the things that they needed. And according to this documentary also by Adam Curtis, that the companies, they wanted to make more money. And so they came up with the idea that people needed to stop buying only what they needed, but also what they wanted. And so they needed to change society in order to meet the standards of the corporations. See? And so that's what happened. The idea of a consumer was created. Continuing, within journalism, when the intent is not to report objectively, but to report with an intent to sway popular attitudes and the social behaviors or shape public opinion, like the words propaganda come to mind, of course, and but because it says here shape public opinion, well, you should know by now that the new speak term is public relations. There's also such a thing as public affairs, but that's a different field. It comes under the scope of social engineering. This also applies when information that would bring into question the viewpoints and social goals of a journalistic establishment is withheld in favor of other information. Within ethical journalism, the knowledge of both personal and establishment producer bias allows the journalist to avoid social engineering by correcting it and reporting factual evidence in a way which does not promote or oppose attitudes and social behaviors, and thereby portray or deny them as the popular attitude and preferable social behavior by virtue of the establishment's authority or possession of a national or international platform. It is of note that social engineering, practiced in exclusion of cultural elements and interacting societies, has led to pogroms, whatever that is, and mass murders, particularly when employed by authoritarian regimes. Often this occurs because these cultures or societies are perceived as possessing undesirable traits. Wow. The acting engineers have used the simple effective tool of violence over the difficult and time-consuming methods of persuasion and logic. Caution. In social engineering, methods include the consideration of the inherent incompleteness of their body of information. Well, that's a misnomer, I think. I think, you know, the story I told you about that ancient king, the ancient prince that became king. You know, they've been studying people for thousands of years. That's what I think. So, social engineering is thousands of years old. And about the incompleteness of their body of information, I would doubt that, not only because of the history that we have, and they know so much about human nature, but also because of the total awareness that's going on. You don't think GCHQ is missing just the tiniest bit of what's going on, do ya? So they have all the information they need, and I think they can move masses of people in very different ways. I saw a report of I think it was a French journalist. I'm not quite sure though. Could have been somebody else. Could have been something I saw on RT. Anyway, he was pointing out also what I said last week, I believe, is that, I said that in chat, by the way, not on air. What it looks like is going on here in Europe is a setup for a civil war, or a war between Muslims and non-Muslims. That's what seems to be going on here. There's a lot of anti-Muslim feelings in different European countries, also in the Netherlands, which expresses itself in the presence of the so-called Party for Freedom, as they dare call themselves. And they have a substantial influence in our government, and also is known to be very anti-Muslim. And it's all based on the 9/11. I tried to confront them, but no response. I had less luck with them than I had with the Department of Defense here that I called. Yeah. I won't repeat that story, but that was more successful than trying to contact the PVV about their premises. So, you know, if you would ask me if that was likely to happen 15 years ago or 16 years ago, I would have said that would be very unlikely. But you see that in a very short time, they seem to be able to, as far as I can see it now, push both sides closer to the edge, so to speak. So, and we have to assume that this is what they want. All right. This kind of thing keeps bugging me also when I think about trying to get a real picture of the reality that I'm living in, is that the information that is being presented to us is what they want us to know. I'm very suspicious that that is the case. I mean, there's a reason why, since JFK, and probably even before that, you know, government has been withholding information. National security, we can't tell you. For decades. And realizing that government probably only belongs to the second level of information. Remember, there's 3 levels of information. That which comes through us through mass media is what we are supposed to talk about. That's the 3rd level. Then there is a 2nd level. Kind of the, I think that's kind of the apparatus that's used to control the people. And then there's the 1st level of information, it's the people controlling the apparatus. So in that kind of society where you know that knowledge is being withheld, how are you ever supposed to get a clue of what's going on? And also, it's the information that they want you to know has to be regarded with suspicion. I think that's also a reason why it took me so freaking long to finally come to some kind of vague conclusions about 9/11, what exactly happened. I figured at the time that I was going to get a very non-contradictive information. But that's not the case. There's still no clear picture of all the things that were going on. Also due to the drills that were going on that day, as some people will claim. Yeah. So that bugs me. That is, you need to even be suspicious of that which they allow you to know. Okay, so where were we? They were talking about inherent incompleteness of their body of information and how it affects their utilization of tools at hand, analysis of social engineering goals and their desirability, which include the desires of the community. No. Desires of the community are created by the social engineering, by the social engineers, which they desire to engineer. Okay, all right, so I should have just read on. Answers the question of the ethics of disclosure. Yeah, well, what do you mean, answer the question of ethics of disclosure? Social engineering without consent is a violation of the culture. Well, excuse me, of course it's without consent. What kind of nonsense is this? That's why I was asking. What do you mean, answer the question of ethics of disclosure? It depends on from whose point you're talking. The people that are supposed to disclose it, or the people that are supposed to be disclosed to? This is ridiculous, right? Social engineering without consent is a violation of the culture. That's insane. That's saying that the culture that you have at the moment is your culture. Right? But it's not. The culture that we were born into was planned out long before we were born. So how can it be a violation? It's their own creation. Alright, so let's try this again. Social engineering without consent is a violation of the culture and constitutes an assault tantamount to a rape or seizing by force of that culture ruptio. Something you can click. I have no idea what that is. I'm not going to check. Consent, full disclosure and involvement presents additional difficulties which help to avoid marginalization of feelings of violation within the culture. Long-term attempts at social engineering in the Middle East may be considered to have extreme backlash as a result of being non-inclusive of the cultural values, body of reliable information, or utilization of the effective tools. This is described in the article Social Engineering 101, How to Make a Refugee Crisis. Hold on, guys, light my cigarette. In defense of the comparison to rape, consider this article Ruptio, which describes the origin of the word which meant seize prey, take by force, from raper, an old French legal term for to seize, in turn from Latin rapere or something, seize, carry off by force, abduct. Social engineering is an exercise of removing an attitude or behavior and replacing it with another, which is done with force when done without consent. Right? So the most basic, I guess it's social engineering also. You know, this just comes up into my mind as I read this. They say that social engineering is an exercise of removing an attitude or behavior and replacing it with another. So an attitude towards authority would belong to that category also, right? So ever since we've had government, you could say that there's been social engineering, because what else is government than a belief in authority? Which is illogical, right? If you can't give away something that you do not have, you cannot give away a right which you do not have, like going to your neighbors and asking for child support. Then you cannot delegate that right to somebody else, as Larkin Rose quite clearly explains, which, according to me, there's no arguing. So, government can in reality not exist, because there are no contradictions in nature. It's not real, it's a fiction. Right. In India, social engineering was effectively done in the state of Bihar and on a grander scale to unify different castes after 2005. Oh, really? The coherency of voting allegiances based on social extremes among upper castes and Daits or something were challenged by this vote poll in Indian reference. There's clickable links there. You can go to for a source of that. All right, and then in C also you get to Edward Bernays, indeed. So that's one we could check out. Social technology is one. Social control. Psychological warfare is in there. Political engineering. Media manipulation. Even engineers of the human soul and Jacques Fresco. Never heard of him, I think. Alright, so if you want to hear anything about those, let me know in the chat and we'll do that. For now we're going to skip back to the brain. Yeah. And then there is so many links to social engineering, it's not funny anymore. 2 scrollable bars. A whole bunch of them beneath them, among which British conquest, to recolonize something, I don't know. Eric L. Trist, gun control, Hollywood, John Dewey, that's a name we've heard before. It's one we could check out. If you want to hear about John Dewey, let me know. Cybernetics. Something we can go into. Artificial scarcity. Marshall McLuhan, that's an interesting figure also. MK Ultra, of course. National Socialism. Opium and heroin trafficking. That's a topic that's also interesting. Drug money laundering with the opium and heroin trafficking. Prussian education system comes back. Prussian militarism. Adam Smith comes in. Agenda 21 from the United Nations, which I have something open also. Could do that. Let me answer a Skype message here, guys. Thanks. Let's see. Unethical human experiments, something we could go to. Oops. The Moot. Rhodes Round Table, I think that will be. I think I misclicked something. Let's see what happens. Yep, I misclicked something. Okay. So now I lost my Wikipedia thingy. Let's see what happens if I reload this. Yeah, for this. Again. So lots of the things that I mentioned are below social engineering, which is usually that this became after. This was after. Right. One of the things that was above is cybernetics, artificial scarcity. Sounds like population control thingy. There's also, and I have no idea what it is, encyclopedia or something. And internationalism came also before that. There's also a couple of things linked. Allen Memorial Institute, classical and medieval trivium. You guys are not very chatty in the chat with all these things that I'm naming. Shall we do Marshall McLuhan then? See what that gets us. Marshall McLuhan. Let's see what we can know about this guy. Oops, wrong. I clicked wrong. I need to click this one. And again, there. Marshall McLuhan. So, 1911. He was born, died in 1918. Hey, morning Cap, how you doing, buddy? Herbert Marshall McLuhan was a Canadian philosopher, oh really, of communication theory and public intellectual. His work is viewed as one of the cornerstones of the study of media theory, as well as having, is that one about cold and warm and things like that? As well as having practical applications in the advertising and television industries. He was educated at the University of Manitoba and Cambridge University and began his teaching career as a professor of English at several universities in the United States and Canada, before moving to the University of Toronto, where he would remain for the rest of his life. McLuhan is known for coining the expressions "the medium is the message" and "the global village," and for predicting the World Wide Web almost 30 years before it was invented. Well, that's interesting, right? That's interesting. Although he was a fixture in media discourse of the late 1960s, his influence began to wane in the early 70s. In the years after his death, he continued to be a controversial figure in academic circles. With the arrival of the internet, however, interest in his work and perspective has renewed. Life and career, let's see if we can find it better. Do we want to do life and career? I don't think so. Well, yeah, let's do it anyway, because I saw some interesting terms. Floating along, Herbert Marshall McLuhan was born in Edmonton, Alberta, to Elsie Noami and Herbert Ernest McLuhan. His brother, Maurice, was born 2 years later. Marshall was a family name, his maternal grandmother's surname. Both of his parents were born in Canada. His mother was a Baptist school teacher who later became an actress. His father was a Methodist and had a real estate business in Edmonton. When World War I broke out, the business failed and McLuhan's father enlisted in the Canadian Army. After a year's service, he contracted influenza and remained in Canada, away from the front. After Herbert's discharge from the Army in 1915, the McLuhan family moved to Winnipeg, Manitoba, where Marshall grew up and went to school, attending Calvin Technical School before enrolling in the University of Manitoba in 1928. At Manitoba, McLuhan explored his conflicted relationship with religion and turned to literature to gratify his soul's hunger for truth and beauty. Really? Later referring to this stage as agnosticism. After studying for 1 year as an engineering student, McLuhan changed majors and earned a BA in 1933, winning a university gold medal in arts and sciences, and later in 1934 an MA in English from the University of Manitoba. He had long desired to pursue graduate studies in England and, having failed to secure a Rhodes scholarships to Oxford, he was accepted to the University of Cambridge. Alright, so major works. I'll skip to that. During his years at St. Louis University, 37 to 44, McLuhan worked concurrently on 2 projects. His doctoral dissertation and the manuscript that was eventually published in 1951 as the book The Mechanical Bride, Folklore of Industrial Man, which included only a representative selection of the materials that McLuhan had prepared for it. McLuhan's 1942 Cambridge University doctoral dissertation surveys the history of the verbal arts. Grammar, logic, and rhetoric, collectively known as the trivium, from the time of Cicero down to the time of Thomas Nashi. So they even have a page on the trivium, do they? I think it took some of what's in here from Jan Irvin, or at least looks like it. They even have the input, process, output. They got it in the right order. Grammar, logic, and rhetoric. Input, process, output. Looks good. So, let's see. Okay. Let's see, is that so? Blah, blah, blah. How do we do that again? Go here, and then contacts. Choop, 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 choop. Scroll, scroll, scroll. There we go. There we go. Yeah. All right. Trivium is implicit in the Huppel de Pup on the marriage of philology and Mercury by Martinus Capella, although the term was not used until the Carolingian Renaissance when the term was coined. Well, that's odd. I don't know when the Carolingian Renaissance was. Let's see. Click that, open. The first of the three medieval renaissances. Alright, so that's the Caroline Renaissance. But what do you mean, coined there? It's a Greek term. Alright, so I don't understand that. Alright. So, we seem to have a muted guest at the moment. No. Let's get back to where we were. McLuhan at times uses the Latin concept of the trivium to outline an orderly and systematic picture of certain periods in the history of Western culture. McLuhan suggests that the Middle Ages, for instance, was characterized by the heavy emphasis on the formal study of logic. Let's see. Can't see where this is going. Okay, how like now? Yeah.
Hey Walter, good morning.
Hey buddy, how you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm doing fantastic. I hope this audio now I'll be able to at least see Hal communicated with me last night, and so we got set up over with Firefox, and the look option right there. It allows for chatting and audio chat. So he's looking at using that to connect with Ron Stevens here from Game On and Canada Live that we simulcast. Game On, of course, originates here at UCY.tv. So perhaps we're going to be able to get them together. And I think, oh man, we talked for about a good 3.5 hours. And I have to say, first off, how honored and privileged I felt that, first of all, Hal took the time to help me with technical issues. And he's been listening to the broadcast I'm doing over there at Real Liberty Media through World Truth. Mm-hmm. Hal, like you and Jules and some others that, you know, I have a pretty good list. JJ, I mean, so many people that I have to thank for that place that I am at now in evolved thought, if that's a good word. But anyways, so here we come along. I like to look at this social engineering and you know, we're all products of it, whether we realize it or not.
Yeah. It reminded me of a question I heard in your show, I believe. And what was it again? And how far, the question was, and by the way, that was a person that asked a lot of questions, and I think a lot of them were very good. He said, in how far is one influenced by the techniques being used if you are aware of them, right? And how far can you negate these influences? You remember that? It was last week.
I'm not calling specific now. Can you?
Yeah, I think it was with Chuck. With
Chuck?
Yeah, or the one after that. But anyway, to me, it looks like, because we are born in a system where our parents don't have a clue, that our behaviors are so predetermined.
Yeah, that's I like that word,
Something like
predetermined
that.
for us. Yeah.
Yeah, that it's become almost unhuman.
Predetermined by conditioning.
Yes, yes. It also reminded me of a story that I heard on another podcast. I listened to so many guys, I don't remember which one. But there was this ruler in the past, I think it was Chinese, and he wanted to show the court beneath him how he ruled his people. And what he did, he got two of the exact same dogs, and they were brothers, these dogs, and from the birth he treated them differently. One he put in the kitchen, and he let eat a lot and became a fat dog, and the other one he made a hunting dog. And when they were like puppies, or maybe a little bit older, he got the court together and got the two dogs, and he put a bowl of soup and a feather on the floor, and the dog that was fed up in the kitchen, of course, went to the bowl of soup, and the hunting dog went to the feather. And he says, here, you see how people are treated young, or dogs, or whatever, rats. That's how they will behave when they mature. See? So, if you are raised in a way that has been planned out for you, then it is going to be very hard to get rid of these behaviors when you grow up. So, it's looking very dark, to be honest with you.
Yeah, isn't it though? Really. All right, let me see if I can sit still. So, as Hal was talking to me last night,
Yeah.
he says, do you understand troubleshooting in electronics? And so, with that, our conversation evolves as we're discussing the technical issues, that possibilities, and I think we've determined what this audio issue is. And I'll have to talk to my producer over in Denmark, there, Flash, and Sir.
When are you on next?
Well, I'm normally running noon Central Time, 1 p.m. Eastern, Fridays. But last week I ran an extra block Monday through Thursday.
Oh.
So last Friday, yesterday, was episode 5.
Yeah.
So now I got to go back and retitle, because I started with episode 0, then 0.5, and so then I went episodes 1 through 4, and then I'm going to have 4.25, 4.5, and 4.75.
Okay.
And then episode 5 Friday. So next week I'll go with that 5.25 or 5 1/4. Maybe we'll title it like that. So yeah, I'll have to back up. No, right here, if I put my glasses on. So I have some guests lined up. So I'm going to do another extra 4 block Monday through Thursday next week. But Monday is Larry Woods. I've been following Larry Woods for at least a good couple of years, and perhaps even longer. He has a great deal of knowledge, and also a network of others that have a tremendous amount of knowledge in the field of electronics. Sorry, man. Barry Prince is calling, and it's dinging over here. Barry Prince was from The Big Puzzle, was my guest last week. I'm taking up on you, buddy. Sorry about that. Let me see where I was at. Yes, with Larry Woods. Anyways, he has a good network of folks that are just they have like a think tank going, right? And I joined them and like I said, it's probably a couple of years back for discussion, and they've really evolved with some coil technology. It's going to discuss the possibilities of or methods of. Too bad you're not here for this one, Desert Hawk. Space travel. As well, I've got some other guests lined up, but I'll work more on that later. Anyways, so back to the social engineering. Anyways, and for me now, I run a little experiment here. Matter of fact, I'm looking at the name of one chatter right now at UCY.TV. That is part of my social experiment, or not experiment. Well, it is kind of an experiment too, but it's more of an observation with me applying stimuli at times. And there was another particular chatter last night that caused some hoopla that is also part of my observing experiment that I like to include with such studies as micro-expressions, body language, inflection of tone when one's speaking, and how when they say something perhaps, and there will be a turn, just a slight turn in the head, and look to the left at you to see is like, okay, does he believe this? Is he believing what I'm saying, right? So there would be many reasons for a person to be involved into a group, and this is also goes to some that Hal and I were speaking of yesterday. And when a person inserts themselves into a particular environment, one might question the purpose, and that comes, and you would question that purpose by your observations of their actions and what it is that you might assume their goal is in what they're doing. Yeah. So there's many different tools of observation for understanding and to be able to come to that point of wisdom of being able to have an understanding of that knowledge and apply it. So with the now Hal said because we talked some about the trivium, right? So he says, I don't even know anything about that. I'm paraphrasing badly, probably perhaps, but he says that's what Hal does is so. I mean, he's such a wordsmith, and I find so many Halisms in this paraphrase plagiarism that I do. That I think though that these points are like gravitons, and from there they draw more bits that connect, and pretty soon that those all connect to another this balltron over here, we'll call it, and then these pathways connect, and more things add up. When we take the overall picture, and the reason why I go so far as to even question the Earth being round. So if for me practically everything that I found that has supposed to have been true has been a lie, then why not be able, for the sake of saying that I ain't been to the edge, I've not been to the wall of ice and looked off the edge, but in the end, is that really important about what it is that is against us? But I do find it important to look at information from the absurd, even from as far left and to far right as where it was I stood. I traveled this journey, and when I started my first episode of What Matters Worldwide here at UCY, I characterized it as a voyage of discovery and set upon these, the pathways that travel to other points in the world, and being able to do that through this web, this ether is an amazing time to be alive right now, and to be able to communicate with people and to see that how much we really are alike, and that we understand this oppression and these powers that are against us, and recognizing that and understanding the methods and the information that's being, like you said earlier, we we probably supposed to only have this information that is given to us to even consider and ponder in the first place. So I find it very important for myself, and I don't do what I do to change the world. That's what I thought I was doing when I started out, and then I realized, hey, it's me being changed, right? And coming to understandings past and beyond our sacred cows of ideology and dogma that just resound in our being for so many. At the mere mention of anything that would fly in the face of that is such an offense that you be damned for even mentioning it. So we look at social engineering because we are a product of that to any degree, and the so-called being awake. I mean, come on, how awake are we really? And if you weren't awake, would you even know that you weren't? So to assume this enlightenment of being knowing above these peons below, we might dilute ourselves at that point. So to question everything, to consider that my most sacred ideology perhaps may be wrong, and to be able to do that for oneself, I think, is the most important aspect of everything that is against us.
Yeah. There's another thing that I saw that would make more clear the point of social engineering is what we would call an Indian, which then later, according to this person, changed to Native American. And he immediately says, well, that doesn't make any sense. Native American. I was born here, and my grandparents were born here, and ages and ages of my people have lived here, and it was not American then. So what do you mean Native American, right? It doesn't make any sense. And also, he said the term Indian also, that is the name that the invading forces gave them, right? Among each other, they were known as the people, right? And he says that at that point where we invaded them and came up with the term Indian, right? At school we are taught that they thought they were in India, and that's why they called them Indians. Now I think that's a joke, but okay. And he said that that's the cultural genocide that's going on, because as of that moment, the history of the people that live there is broken off. And he said that it's the same with the Western people. We used to have our own culture, and this goes back as far as the memory of the people. But because our culture has been hijacked, we don't have such a collective memory. And therefore also we have lost sight of who exactly we are.
You know, I find that to be very interesting. And earlier I had come across this shirt, and it has Caucasian on it, and it's got this white guy with, instead of a feather at the back of his head, like the Indians logo for what was it, the baseball team or football, I forget. They had a feather, so they had $1 for his feather above his head, and it is what it was poking fun at being offended by this notion. and even back to, you know, when some folks may recall the sports teams, like what, the Chiefs, the Indians, I don't know, some of these names that were given, and there was this great offense, right? And then so going back to Native Americans, Indians, or the people, or other names that are given, Aboriginal, the First Nations, like in Canada, the First Nations movement. So what I guess I'm getting at is that these names that are in a way a type of ownership, or to take and take that and then place them into a category which would exclude the idea of this as of being a people, or the group of men, or man, that is, men, women, sons, and daughters that make up the whole of that group. And then again, with isolation and stuff, you of course have these that come against one another at times. But as far as scarcity and so forth, there would be naturally occurring, but most of the scarcity today is what it would be considered a part of the social engineering, the conditioning, the dog outside or in the kitchen, and the bells ringing for the Pavlonians, if you will. It is all. It is. Have you ever been to Pavlovia? Anyways, Pavlonians, dogs. That was part of a joke, anyways, from elsewhere. From Real Liberty Media Chat. Yeah. But anyways, yeah, we are conditioned, aren't we? Part of this.
Yeah.
Grand experiment that's performed upon us and against us.
Yeah, and they even mention this in Indian philosophy. They use that term a lot when it's translated into English, that is. I don't know the exact Sanskrit term, but they use the term conditioning and illusion a lot. And what they will then do is give you, they will break down that conditioning by trying to use logical arguments, and then give you a religious God as an authority-based way of looking at the world. So even if you realize that the conditioning that we have undergone is not of our own choosing, and somebody breaks it down, then you still need to be careful as to what kind of behaviors you're going to accept. And this, of course, has also to do with ethics, third branch of philosophy, something people don't usually talk about anymore. I think personally, and this is just one of my suspicions, is that we have not been taught to talk properly because of the removing of the trivium in the education. Because the trivium is grammar, logic, and rhetoric, or rhetoric refers to talking, specifically persuasive. And there are certain rules for how you're supposed to use a language, and those are often also not taught anymore. I guess that's also a reason why there's so much gobbledygook among the people.
Yeah, that so much what's used against us is we enter in with, of course, with exceptions, but by obligation and duty. And I think there's terms that are applied against us that lends us under jurisdiction, and this that we're lent under, we get there by this social engineering. So to understand that we have been conditioned to accept these powers that stand against us, administration of corruption.
Yeah, not only that, but also then think that it is necessary, that it must be that way. Yes,
as Larkin Rose says, that the belief in authority is
Yeah.
the most dangerous superstition.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's not authority itself. The authority is an actual fiction. And like his video about the dots,
Yeah.
right?
In case you
So,
didn't see that, go to YouTube, Lark and Rose. What's it called? The Dot?
Yeah, the dot or dot. Yeah, the dots.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's the dot. Dot. Oh, yeah, I did find or answer or give answer to a question of what is Morse code, and that comes from one of my albums over at World Truth. I guess if you're not a member of World Truth, that there's a little problem of viewing it, I guess, in the coding. So I'd invite you to join World Truth if you're into social media and things. Grammy Mary for providing that, and also that server that goes over to Real Liberty Media and then rebroadcast back here to UCY.TV with Al Anthony. And I feel like sometimes I'm of course being punny a bit here, but a disciple of Hal. I listen to Hal a lot. He has a lot of great wisdom. And as we were talking last night about being able to convey information, because information that is conveyed to us is, after all, used against us, and it is when that we take that power of understanding and being able to then turn and use it against that system of corruption.
Yeah, basically they're using your own logical reasoning against you by leaving out certain specific parts of the grammar. That's why it's grammar first. Make sure you have all the available pieces and then logic. But if you can occult some of the information, then present the information through mass media, which will lead to a conclusion by the public that is already known, because they know how our logic works.
So what we have to be then is logic scientists, and we need to explore by observation. Again, I find these metaphors that for what it is that I do, like this voyage of exploration, and then it has evolved into this the show I'm doing now, that broadcast there of this is no time for rational thinking, and kind of using words that almost work against themselves right there, and causing a moment for some of them pathways to fire off and think. Now, is it really? And I've used the nautical theme there. So Chuck Horton from Double Cross Radio was my guest yesterday, and I titled that, as I'm titling the shows 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's A, B, C, D, E. So number 5 was E, exiled, and the topic is expatriation and reasons that you might consider for leaving the U.S. of A, aka the D.C. corporatocracy. But anyways, so this as I started out in this exploration of discovery, I find where I docked at least at one point was the realization that the real pirates is this corporatocracy or what this is that is against us, right? So and so here I am again, like I say, with this sailing on the waters and myself as a free vessel, not subject to the authority of men. Jordan Page, yes. And we got some things to say about Jordan Page yesterday on there. He's a freedom movement singer. He does the intro. Listen is the name of the song for Double Cross Radio. Thursday nights, UCY.TV. Chuck Horton. So, yeah, we got a lot of great radio here.
Yeah, I've heard some of them in the past.
Yeah, Michael Cross. I dropped that link earlier, talking about art as propaganda and is propaganda.
Art is propaganda.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. And I made a, and I think I put that in the social engineering album
I think you can get some good examples of that in 1933 and 1944 in Germany.
Oh,
About
certainly.
art being propaganda, sure.
I'm
But
gonna grab
also, of course, Hollywood, you know.
certainly. If now you're a member of World Truth, a few folks, JJ is. I'm proud to see folks come over, and this is a good. If you're on Facebook, and I am, and others are, I use it as a tool. And now with World Truth, it's a really great place to actually come together. With, of course, there's all types there: the Jew hater, the Nazi, the flat earther, the flat Earth hater. Yeah. I will block you if you're a flat earther. So. Yeah, I said in chat earlier, and you said you got a kick out of it. Was I believe in a hollow flat Earth.
Yeah, that was a good one. Yeah.
Oh, so here is let me drop this into chat, and it'll be there right here in just a few seconds when you hear me say that. Woo, propaganda panda, sure. So, anyways, I have a theme, and how I title the album. Now, Propaganda Panda album's not necessarily the good example, but I title the album, and then I title the photograph, and then I include the information. So what I do, I have these albums here that I use as like a little database, right? So topics. And what I did before when I started this method on Facebook was to create a page. And so I ended up with, I don't know, some 50 odd pages or whatever. And so Facebook is not, I use it now just for my pool to draw from, because I spent all that time in that exploration, and going to find things that were as far away from my ideology as I could to challenge myself. And then I come upon you with the method of the trivium, and then I was able to use that. Now I said Nazi and flat Earth, hollow. Dan B. Cooper, and to use that as a tool for myself to better outfit myself for this exploration of understanding, right, and discovery. Mm-hmm. So with this trivium method, I find it a great resource for myself, not to be used as a tool or a weapon against somebody else. Although I practice that. I practice, and I don't always accomplish it, nonviolent communication, because sometimes a 2x4 says so much that you can't really say with words.
Yeah.
Dong, right upside the head. But anyways, as whatever label one might like to hang upon themselves, the constitutionalist, the truther, whatever, because there's so many after all, right? But besides placing yourself in a box, maybe you can get a good echo chamber and you can hear yourself a little better. But just beyond that, I think it's good to open the lid and poke your head out some, and get out in the sunshine and see those flowers growing, and being able to get an understanding what matters worldwide, and our commonality. It should be that at some point, despite our differences, we have to understand that where we have our commonality is this oppressor that is against us, that is at war with us and against us, and victimizes us, and we're too busy saying, well, apples and oranges, than to realize that we have to, if it's not too late, we have to address this, and at some point there has to be, whether it be a teeter at the tipping point, or one rock thrown across the line that just hits the right spot. We have to have this hope in what it is that we do, that we can affect this change, or not being a naysayer and say, come on with the blood in the streets, and let's get this party rocking and get it over with. But there ain't gonna be no sleeping it off on the couch the next day. This ain't going to be that kind of party. Yeah. You might be laying in a ditch, but it ain't going to be one you're going to crawl up out of. Rock on, baby. Take care, 8 Hawks. We'll see you when you come back. It's time to hitch up the mule team there, he says. Yeehaw.
Okay. And my browser is fracking up again. Oh my god.
It's coming through on my end. I don't know if we lost anything going through.
No, I was looking for a link that I had open. I can't find it. Now my browser says I'm not reacting. This is irritating.
So let me say this then while you're looking. As I said, we're scientists. So in all our observations, what if we didn't go to the moon? What if the world is flat? What if we looked over the edge? What does it really matter?
That's what I have also. What does that matter?
Yeah, things stay the same. That's in the system that's against us, and so when no one steps up to stop it, then that silence then is our consent, right?
Yeah, that's what the page was about that I was looking for. Is that you mentioned that we are up against this oppressor, right? And I'm thinking that it can only. There was a 15th century philosopher that I was looking for that I had a link open, but apparently I closed that one. Who was like the 19th century, I believe, Lysander Spooner, who explains that it is unable for these oppressors, to exist without our consent. That if we withdraw the consent, that they are powerless. Right? So the power lies with us, with all of us. So that's, I think that's where we need to put our focus, not on these so-called megalomaniacs or otherwise psychology affected human beings that do not seem to have any empathy. I think we should focus on educating everybody about the insanity of giving consent to the ruling class, so to speak. Yeah.
In the word educating, the process that we go about doing that is of importance, and our communication skills are important. Now, like with Hal, I said, you have this. He's in the kitchen, and he's got this big old heap of nutrition for us, right? That nutrition for that which is used against us, right? And how to address that. So, like as for me, I go up and sit at the table and sup and dine and take some with me to pass out and share along the way. And if you're giving out somebody a snack, if it's got a stench to it and it maybe doesn't smell so nice, somebody's not apt to really partake with that which you wish to share with them, right? So our means of communication or delivery to as a conduit or a means of transportation of this education that we would suppose to share. Imagine it as delivering goods to Hawaii, and you've stacked up your goods on the dock there at Long Beach, and you want to ship them over to Hawaii, and so you have to have a method of being able to take that across the waters, right? So when we're talking to somebody and if it's in a offensive posture, right? Of course, nobody's there. They go to defense, right? So Friday, next Friday, actually, yeah, I just came up with this morning. The F number 6 in my series is going to be fight, and then it'll be fair winds, from fair winds to floating the anchor. And if you're not understanding of the nautical terms, and you could look that up real quick, but it's really good. Floating the anchor is to about, you hang your, Captain Gringo will know about this, guarantee you. Hanging your anchor behind you and bowing into the wind, into the surge, the storm that's coming against you, and riding it out instead of, getting like the perfect storm where that ship's rolled over and sank, whatever. But had they been using the method of floating the anchor, so you have to bow into this fight, right? And sometimes we do have the fair winds, but we are still upon the water as captains of our own vessel. Yeehaw, Captain Gringo. And I refer to my co-host at No Time for Rational Thinking as my co-captain. And, his wife who produces is being there at the helm, as a pilot, as the producer. So,
how did you manage to get him as a co-host? Well, how did you get into contact with him?
World Truth. I'd been a member.
Okay.
Yeah, I joined World Truth some time back, and then it's changed ownership. Grammy Mary's got it and doing a great job, thanks. But when it transferred, the guy that started, I can't call his name off the top of my head, but I was a member then. But they dumped like 10,000 members, and so I believe we're back around somewhere about 5,000 odd members or something like that. I got about 188 friends on there that, and a few of you guys listening now have come over and created an account, and I like it for the fact that it's quality over quantity. That Facebook, with the part of that which is used against is, their algorithms and their censors and all that, which doesn't exist at worldtruth.org. So it's a means of connecting and communicating and finding what it is people are saying, because most people, I included, obviously, because I am the paraphrased plagiarist or person, that, I mean, basically what we have to resound from ourselves. Of course, we've gone and collected it from somebody else. We're passing it back out. Sharing this from this buffet of this nutritious brain food that not only at the table of Hal, but at many others. So being responsible with that means of delivery. So we're assigned this cargo to take and deliver to this other place or people, and so we have a responsibility, so in making sure we get it right there, right? So, like if you lost your cargo at sea, you might find that you would be responsible for the loss of the contents, right? So, so we do have a responsibility in our delivery, and that means that we have to be responsible in how we do so, and with means of communication such as the voluntary communications or nonviolent communication method. We have to find a connect, and I'll give you a good example, like with talking with a cop. You have to, if you're sitting there shouting and screaming at them or posturing yourself aggressively, they're a cop, okay? But if you can say, "Hey, did you get a deer this year?" And then suddenly you're a man talking to a man, and you're not talking to this person in this seat of decision by authority over you, and then non-aggressively you make mention to say perhaps now a plant ain't harmed nobody, right? And they are then thinking as a man and not from that seat of authority or a decision right over you to be used against you. And then they have the responsibility to have the awareness of what it is where that line is, and they won't be able to say, I was just following orders. I mean, that's from the very smallest point, but you bring it to another level as the situation would warrant, right? So each time that we make a delivery, when we're backing up the truck or pulling up to the dock, to tie off or to bump the dock and open the doors and roll it out. There's every time it's going to be a little different because there might be something in the way over here, a buoy there or whatever. You've got to navigate each time that you deliver it. So each time is circumstantial upon the situation.
Yeah. Yeah, it's good to hear that you had Hal on. How long did he stay?
He and I spoke privately for about 3.5 hours last night. Good morning, Jules.
Yeah, good morning, Matty, Jules.
Maddie.
Dale also. A couple of people joined in the chat. The one...
Jules is hearing me.
Yeah, bit of lag, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
The one link that I was looking for is a YouTube link by Etienne de la Boutie. Well, actually, it's not by him because he lived around 1550. I think he died somewhere 1560 or something. And this is stomach-turning stuff. It's by Etienne de la Boutie, who, by the way, is also a member of the parliament there. But if you hear what he has to say about authority, it's stunning. It's really stunning. It's the discourse of voluntary servitude. This is in 1550 about, right? And I was listening to this for like 3/4 of an hour, and it dawned to me, this stuff is timeless. And it proved to be for the rest of the duration, which is 1.5 hours. It's 1.5 hour. And it's really a good video. I will link it in the chat after the show, so that people can go there. And it's really, really good. It's there's also another one, which you might do first, so you know a little bit more about the position that Etienne de la Boutie was in when he wrote this. We have stuff about the Huguenots, for instance, in this video. But the other one is The Political Thought of Etienne de la Boutie by Murray and Rothbard. Now that was a new name to me, but that seems to be one of the leading figures, besides Locke and Rose, in my opinion, for anarchistic thought and voluntarism. So I'll link those two in the chat when we're done here, if people want to check them out later. Hey Dan, he's complaining that he hasn't been mentioned. So let's see. Now we do the whole list here. Captain Dell, Dan Hopper, Jules, Matty Clues, Tomato, and Vince. And two Anons. Welcome everybody. How you doing? Alright, so even in 1550 you can see that they are talking about voluntary servitude. Yeah, they weren't stupid then, apparently, huh? Yeah. All right, so let's see. We got 10 minutes left, Vince.
Okay, I just posted. I've been rambling on over here with you, so I just posted for next show. We got Ron Stevens coming up next at the top of the hour.
Yes.
Last Sunday's episode. Hal and I were talking because they've been wanting to get together to do radio. So Hal and I did a little experiment with through Firefox and the look button there, and being able to communicate by audio And so I think that we may be able, and I'm in communication with Duck, producer for Ron. I really appreciate what Duck does. He actually, I don't think he's quite appreciated for the amount of production that he does behind the scenes. And thanks, Chris. Yeah. So, anyways, yeah. After you is Game On, and Nuclear Hot Seat with Liv Hal-Levy. Geoengineering, Unlock the Door. Michael Cross, I dropped the link for him on the Artist Propaganda, michaelcross.net. Truth on the Tracks, Brandon Turbeville. What a great guy right there. You talk about cutting through. He does that, which segues perfectly into Cutting Through the Matrix with Alan Watt, followed by our Interesting Times with Tim Kelly and Sovereign Tech with Brian. And then again, there's Ron, Canada Live, simulcasting right here at ucy.tv at 10 p.m. Eastern. And so, yeah, lots of great radio. The weekend's great. Sundays is a really, really awesome day as well. I'll be producing the show for Chris tomorrow, hosting his call, and I'll be in touch with him more to find out what it is he's up to then in Voice of Rebellion. So, yeah, I would finish what I had to say today would be that through these methods that we've learned and adapted for tools for ourselves to be used for ourselves and not against others as weapons, but that wisdom is knowledge applied, and and without applying it, there's not. The hope is to be effective. Remedies to what we're up against, and or actually what's up against us, right? And to not be misinformed. And to understand this, the difference between cause and remedy, win versus victory, and the disconnect that lies in between.
Mm-hmm. All right. So your steady spot is Fridays at Real Liberty Media.
Yep, World Truth, Real Liberty Media. And
What time? Friday?
Yeah, noon Central, 1 p.m. Eastern, and I broadcast as a side-by-side to the chatters. I steal away from William Roberts. That's the late Will Roberts, another man of wisdom, and that will, for me, forever be categorized among the greats, such as Hal Anthony, Ralph Epperson, Mae Brussels, and Bill Cooper, and many other voices. These pioneers that that led the front to this place that we are now in this battleground, right? And our mind is, dog. You're not even listening. You're over at Fetch. So, anyways, but for you, dog, the mind as being the only battlefield. Well, it's the battlefield of prime importance because people don't die in the streets if they've won that battle for the mind first. So, yeah, the mind is the only battlefield, and that was the title of an episode last week. So,
yeah, I would certainly agree with that. And William Roberts is indeed one to check out. He can still be heard at ucy.tv. By virtue of Oracle, which doesn't exist anymore, I believe. And also William Roberts was the one who pointed out Etienne de la Boetie, actually. And that's why when his name came across at some other investigation, I went and looked this up, Etienne de la Boetie. And yeah, it's very interesting. All right, then. That awesome. Was it for your part?
Well, I could add some more. Fact that no matter the appearance to you, by being able to eat and go squat as you will, and to be able to roam, you're still tethered. You're still enclosed. The pod may appear to be bigger, but it's still an open prison. The importance is that to have a place to fight from, and that's what's that place that's protected. So, and realize what the ramifications, actions are, and what the next recourse are in this battlefield of the mind. We need to hone our tactics, hone our tools, keep our weapons clean. because there is a time to use that weapon in this on the battlefield in our mind.
Yeah, I tend to think of it not so much as a fight or a battle, but more as ignoring them away, creating our own values, using things like counter economics, and just ignore them out of existence. I don't think there is a need for a fight or a battlefield. In the mind, of course, you were talking about, but yeah, that's just what these terms.
Yes, strictly, of course.
Yeah.
Sorry, I watched on you there. Yeah, of course, metaphorically, and
yeah.
But we really have to ask ourselves in that metaphor when we're all in the same foxhole and we're under the oppressor, and under that oppressor lies the evil. Well, we need to find a place to stop that aggressor and right the wrong. You know, we're up against this smart bully. Thanks, Sal. It used to be that the dunce on the big dumb dunce on the playground that was pushing you around. That now it's the geek on steroids, right? In the social engineering and in the genetic manipulation and all these factions that make up the corporate body of this evil that is against us. And that is the oppressor.
Uh-huh. Yeah. All right. So the people in the chat are having a fun time with flat Earth and things like that. It's hollow point Earth theory. Yeah.
I like it. Hollow point Earth.
Fantastic.
Thanks, Dal. That's perfect. Yeah. But in the end, what does it really matter? If it was round or flat, in the end, we're still under the system of oppression. This mechanical beast that grinds us up and shacks us up.
All right. We're moving up
that
to the end of the show, buddy.
Thanks, Walter. I appreciate you having me on. And I thank Hal for the lessons that he shared with me personally from behind the woodshed. Incredible man. Thanks, Jules. You are among the greatest of the heroes in this on this battlefield of the mind. Awesome. Thanks, Walter. Love and peace, y'all. And I'm gone.
All right, Vince. Thanks a lot for joining. Take care, buddy.
Bye-bye.
All right. Let's see. Remove that from the group. So next time I call back, I'll only get UCY. Check them out. UCY.tv. It's a nice site. Sometimes when I go there, I also check the Big Mine. There are like short news bursts, and that's about the only way that I keep up with what's going on. Usually, my head is more into history, like with this Agenda La Boetie from 1550, or at the newly found website historyofphilosophy.net. They have more than 240 episodes, of which I started at number 1 just today. So that also goes into history. And been focusing more on history lately than in the past. Funny, right? And I think we will keep on digging a bit more into history, also via using the brain from Richard Grove. So thanks a lot for listening, everybody. I'll be back next week. Take care, Capt, Del, Dan, Hopper, Jules, Matty, Tomato, and Vince, and 4 Anons. Take care, everybody. See you next week. Bye-bye.
How dare you?
to create, so to say, mass-produced models of human beings arranged in some kind of a scientific process.